Welcome to the Alex Salmond Show. This week, everyone's back at business after the festive season, but it would seem nothing has changed. We'll be taking a look at where the land lies in advance of a second attempt at a vote on the PM's deal, currently scheduled for next Tuesday, the 15th of January, as we speak to the SNP and DUP. These two parties, one fiercely pro-European and one avowedly anti-European, are united in opposition to the Prime Minister's deal. Is there anything she can say to win them round? However, first we turn to something completely different. Scotland's First Minister said this week that she'll be giving an update on her position on a second Scottish independence referendum very soon. And on that subject, we'll be speaking to leading SNP Councillor Chris McEleny. His successful attempt at an employment tribunal in July last year to secure a decision that belief in Scottish independence should be protected from discrimination hit the headlines in a big way. Now it's being challenged by the Ministry of Defence at a reconsideration hearing set down for next Monday. But first, your tweets, messages and emails that span over both our Christmas and New Year shows. We hear firstly from David Cunningham, who says, "Can we book you for 3 o'clock next year?" Of course, David is referring to the Right Reverend Jolly.
It's been a hell of a year.
Mary says, "The Reverend I Am Jolly would be proud of you, Alex. Merry Christmas." Well, thank you, Mary. Archie McNaughton says of our Christmas show, "The man is brilliant," referring, of course, to the wonderful impressionist Lewis MacLeod. And back to our New Year show, where James says, "Happy birthday to Alex from me and my wife. We love the show." Thank you so much, James. Murdo says, "Great show as usual, very entertaining and informative." Seamus says, "Scotland should capitalise on the Scottish Gaelic and Scots languages the way Ireland, Wales, Brittany and Catalonia do with the regional languages." I think, of course, Seamus was watching our New Year show. We did a roundup of all of our favourite parts of the last year where Scotland was way high up that list. And finally from Granny Hazel, who says, "Actually, this was quite a good compilation with a moving tribute to a survivor of the sinking of the Lancastrian, I think it was." Yes, Hazel, it was indeed. It was the wonderful Ernest Beasley. Now, Christopher McEleny, councillor and SNP group leader at Inverclyde Council, won the right to challenge his employer, the Ministry of Defence, over alleged discrimination against him when his security clearance was withdrawn in 2016. At that time, he was working as an electrician at a munitions depot in Bishopton, Renfrewshire, and had announced his candidacy for deputy leadership of the SNP. In an interview with security service officials, Chris McEleny says he was asked about his mental health, his views on Trident, Scottish independence and social media posts on Rangers Football Club. Despite already having been vetted and given security clearance, Councillor McEleny says that was withdrawn after he made his deputy leadership pitch. At an ensuing employment tribunal, he secured a decision that belief in independence should be protected from discrimination. It is this decision which is now being challenged by the Ministry of Defence. Alex recently met up with him in Edinburgh.
And now I'm delighted to be joined by Chris McEleny. Chris, welcome to the Alex Salmond Show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell us a bit about this case. It sounds, in one side, quite complicated, but on the other hand, you're trying to establish a point of principle with the MOD.
You know, this is now the third year that I've been involved in this, and I think for quite a long time no one really knew anything about it. And then all of a sudden it became quite a big press issue. But in essence, it is quite simple. Is a belief in Scottish independence something any employer, regardless of it's been the MOD or the UK government, is that something that's okay to discriminate against someone simply because they believe Scotland should be an independent country? And that's the decision I won earlier on in the year. But of course,
this was a very substantial press in Scotland. As you rightly say, the first time that people have been interested in your case, when you won an employment tribunal?
It was that employment tribunal. It was a preliminary hearing to determine whether my belief in Scottish independence was something that I could claim direct discrimination against, to take it to that full employment tribunal.
And what the judge said was it was akin to having a faith or a code of belief.
Well, that was unfortunate the way it got presented in some of the media, because it really missed the intellectual, academic points. It's akin to a religious belief or a philosophical belief, and it's that philosophical belief. That was a case that I was making, and that this is something that clearly is important to me, yourself, and hundreds of thousands of people, I would argue, across Scotland, that it's not about the political opinion of what you would do in an independent Scotland, what policies you would pursue, but for your right as a nation to be free for freedom alone. And that's a belief I've got, and I think it's a belief that many people across Scotland have and share.
Let's look at this from the MOD's point of view. I mean, you know, they are charged with the defence of the country, and you are going about trying to, as they would say, break it up. So aren't they entitled to say, we're a bit worried about this McEleny guy because his interests are not for the essential unity of the United Kingdom?
Yeah, that would be a fair point, of course, if they made that from day one. But I had security clearance for over 12 years, over a decade. My father had DV clearance. In fact, he got a commendation from the Second Sea Lord when they retired after 42 years of defence service. So that argument would have been fine if they made that from day one. But you can't just wait 10 years, 12 years down the line. Someone stands for elected office with the SNP to determine all of a sudden that because you believe in Scottish independence and you're an SNP member, you're a security risk. And I think that that's an important point as well, because there are hundreds of thousands of people that work for the civil service in the United Kingdom. And during the last referendum, lots of those people were too scared to put their head above the parapet because they were scared of that sort of behaviour that they would perhaps see, the internal emails that went through government departments warning people how you should vote. And that's the political point of this debate as well. Is this sets a real precedent that it doesn't just protect me or people that believe in Scottish independence, it believes people that believe in any sort of political belief, whether that's people that believe in membership, continued membership of the United Kingdom, or of course people like me that believe in Scottish independence. You should be protected from discrimination in the workplace, and it shouldn't be okay to discriminate against someone just because that precedent has not been set before.
Well, one of our notable unionist journalists in Scotland said famously that, look, the BBC is campaigning against Scottish independence, and quite right too. The former head of the Treasury was reputed to have said that, look, this independence referendum is not like a general election, that Her Majesty's Treasury should be defending Her Majesty, the things on the tin. Couldn't somebody from the MOD say the same thing? Surely the MOD is there to defend the country.
Yeah, but if they said that, they would need to say to people that come from Jamaica they can't serve in the armed forces. They would need to say to people from Canada or India or Australia, people that come from the Commonwealth countries that can serve to this very day in Her Majesty's armed forces. They would need to tell those people that they're a security threat because they live in an independent nation. So again, that argument just doesn't stack up. And there are lots of McElhenys of the world, I think, within the defence community that believe in Scottish independence. And just because you believe in Scottish independence doesn't make you a security threat, because we would still be a member. The independence we campaigned for in 2014 would have seen as part of that Commonwealth family, it would have seen as a member of NATO. So if that's a security threat, I think the security services have some real questions to answer at the end of this case.
Of course, the Queen as head of state, which is, after all, Her Majesty's Treasury and Her Majesty's Armed Forces. Sometimes the top brass don't seem to remember that or to understand it. But nonetheless, how about the political angle to this? I mean, what about people that say, well, look, you know, McEleny was a candidate for the deputy leadership of the SNP, as a member of the SNP National Executive, a group leader for the SNP in Inverclyde Council. Aren't you making just a bit of a publicity, political bandwagon of this case?
Yeah, well, bear in mind, this first happened in 2016 when I was standing in the election for deputy leader. And if I wanted to make political capital, I could have made the political capital then. But this is so much more important than politics. And I think I'm really lucky in that I get to read what people are writing about me at this moment in time. And I think across many people's lives, you get defining moments. And I think this is a defining moment. I've got a choice. I can either decide to live on my knees or I can die on my feet. And I'm certainly going to stand on my own 2 feet and stand up to the United Kingdom Government and Her Majesty's Ministry of Defence and basically say it's unacceptable to discriminate against me because I believe in Scottish independence, and it's unacceptable to discriminate against anyone that comes after me because they too believe in Scottish independence.
So you've won your first round, but the MOD or the government are appealing against you. They're going to challenge the ruling in your favour. Where does the case go from here?
Of course, they're entitled to appeal that decision, but the cynic in me would argue that that's exactly the tactic they're pursuing, because they don't want to actually get to the arguments of why I was discriminated against, because effectively the Ministry of Defence can't win this case. They can only lose it. They either need to win the Employment Tribunal by arguing that it was just a mistake that they gave me security clearance for over a decade, or they lose that case by basically it being proven in that Employment Tribunal that I was discriminated against because of my belief in Scottish independence. And I think that as we're now into 3 years and people start to learn more about this case, I think they'll be starting to be telling the Ministry of Defence to get their act together, give me the apology I'm owed so that I can get on with my life and move on from this.
So your message to the MOD is Swador, Meadow and McEleny?
Well, I think I'm due an apology, the way I was treated. Security, in essence, I'm just a local councillor. and I've got security services coming to my door to ask me questions about Glasgow Rangers Football Club, the fact I've got an Irish surname, the fact I'd about a depression, which is another narrative here as well, because we've got lots of servicemen and women that have opened up about mental health, which I did a few years ago. They face the risk of losing security clearance. And what sort of message is that to send out to people in this day and age, that if you're open and you want to speak about your mental health, you should keep it quiet, because somebody might turn up at your door for Her Majesty's Security Service to talk to you about it. And I think that was all just a smokescreen for the fact that I was a member of the SNP, I was standing for Deputy Leader of the SNP, and I believe in Scottish independence. And the proof's in the pudding, because after a year of being suspended, I was reinstated to my post because I had no case to answer. So someone at some point decided I was to be suspended because I was standing for Deputy Leader of the SNP and I believe in independence. And these are a lot of facts that I think need to come out at that employment tribunal.
So if you're a simple message for the high hegians in the MOD, what would it be, Chris?
I think they should be scared, because I think that they can't hide from the transparency of an open employment tribunal. They're either going to have to apologise for the way they treated me, or they're going to have to apologise that the security service in this country aren't fit for purpose. And I'm pretty sure they're not willing to admit to the latter. So I think it's high time they should apologise to me for the way I was treated.
What sort of support have you had across the political spectrum? Have the people from the other parties have said, well, you've got a good point of principle there, Chris?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've had a lot of support from within the trade union movement, people that have vocally campaigned against Scottish independence and for a no vote, because they see this case on its merits, and that, of course, it's unacceptable to discriminate against someone because they believe in Scottish independence. And I think to sum it up, a lot of people said, what were the MOD playing at? They need to get their act together. That's people from Unison, people from Unite, who've been quite vocal on Twitter. They've been happy to speak to Sunday newspapers about that as well. So that's quite refreshing, that people, despite people trying to say this is politics, people from across the political spectrum can easily see this isn't political. This is about someone standing up for their legal rights, their legal employment rights, your entitlement to go to a tribunal, and your entitlement that you can go to work without fear of discrimination. And,
you know, this business of taking on the might of the MOD, it must be a costly affair. How are you managing to fund this progression of court cases?
Yeah, it's a very expensive process to bring on legal representation, and it has been quite stressful, sitting up at night reading all the ins and outs.
So you've been representing yourself?
Yeah, I've represented myself, and I won that decision myself. But going forward, obviously, as it opens up into the full employment tribunal, I think it's clear that I need to take on professional representation, because this is a very serious case, and it's not just about me, it's about the precedent this will set for people to come, and I think it's really important that I need to get that representation as soon as possible.
Well, Chris, I can't deliver you a verdict in your employment tribunal against MOD, but I can present you with Alex Salmond for appearing on the show.
Which is a prize in itself.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
We asked the MOD to send a representative to come on to the show to speak to us about the case or provide us with a statement, but we are yet to hear back from them. Join us after the break, where it's back to the future, or at least back to Brexit. We'll see you then. Welcome back. Things have been heated both inside and outside Parliament this week as members return after the festive break, with just 78 days to go until Britain is set to leave the European Union.
You lost the people's vote. Anna, you're a fascist. Anna, fascist. Anna Soubry, you're a fascist.
You need to show that there are children.
You're a fascist. Anna, why are you calling us EDL without any proof? We're not EDL, Anna.
Two police.
Anna, you're full of lies. Yes, Anna, you're fascist. Anna, you're full of lies.
The Speaker, John Bercow, has said that what happened to MP Anna Soubry was intolerable, and he confirmed he had written to Police Commissioner Cressida Dick about attacks on MPs. A large number of MPs have also signed a letter calling for police action over abusive protesters outside Parliament. And things weren't too happy inside the House either.
The Foreign Secretary said the Prime Minister has not been asking for anything new in her discussions with the European Union. She doesn't tell us, so doesn't that tell us that the Prime Minister has been recklessly wasting time, holding the country to ransom with the threat of no deal in a desperate attempt to blackmail MPs to vote for her hopelessly unpopular deal?
Prime Minister.
The right honourable gentleman can say what he likes about no deal, but he opposes any deal that the government has negotiated with the European Union. He opposes the deal. He opposes the deal that the EU say is the only deal, and that leaves him with no deal. The only way to avoid no deal is to vote for the deal.
Alex spoke to SNP MP for East Kilbride, Straven and Lesmahago, Dr Lisa Cameron, and DU MP for Strangford, Jim Shannon.
Lisa, if I could come to you first. Theresa May hopes that over the mince pies and the festivities, members of Parliament will have a change of heart. Is there any weakening of your position, indeed any weakening of the SNP's position?
No, not at all. In fact, I took the opportunity over the Christmas break to speak to businesses, to speak to local constituents who are extremely concerned about jobs, livelihoods, the local economy and the NHS. And so there's been absolutely no change of heart. This deal doesn't protect our economy and it doesn't protect our local jobs in East Kilbride, Straven and Lesmahago.
Jim Shannon, probably Theresa May as Prime Minister has perhaps more hope that she might persuade the DUP to resume their full relationship. Is there any weakening in the DUP position over the holidays?
Certainly not, Alex. You mentioned there about over the mince pies. Well, I can tell you something, the mince pies are more palatable than Theresa May's withdrawal agreement, if I'm quite honest. I enjoy the mince pies and my Christmas pudding much more, but no change whatsoever. I think the terminology that Nigel Dodds, our party leader here, used over the last week's meeting with Theresa May was two very specific words. He used the words poisonous and toxic. And I think those words tell you where we are in relation to the withdrawal agreement. And although we're walking through the lobbies and the confidence and supply, and we're honouring our obligation to that. At the same time, I think there seems to be almost like a parallel universe that they're in. I keep saying to them,
this is the government.
This is government. Yeah. I say to them, do you not realise that this is not the withdrawal agreement is going nowhere? No, we think we'll win it. I said, you will not win it. Not in a million years. And the quicker you realise that, the better. What you've got to be thinking about now is where you're going after this. That's the question. They have got the answer.
Now, Brexit's dominated politics and political discussion, political debate in the Houses of Parliament. But for people outside politics, they might find it quite strange that the staunchly anti-European DUP and the stalwart pro-European SNP are taking common cause against the Prime Minister's agreement. Why is that, Jim Shannon?
I can only speak for us. Obviously, Lisa will speak for the Scottish Nationalist Party. But as far as we're concerned, nothing has changed. The withdrawal agreement still very clearly has the border down, the backstop down the Irish Sea. We can't change that. Everyone I spoke to last week and this week and every time I speak to anyone back home, it's as clear as a bell. The constitutional change that makes for Northern Ireland is a step too far. And I think you can't ignore either, Alex, if I can say this, the 119 Conservative MPs who think the same as us. So while we as a party are very clear what we're saying, there's 119 Conservative MPs, and I suspect perhaps maybe a few more, maybe 130, maybe thereabouts, maybe 140, who also think the same. And the backstop is a step too far in the withdrawal agreement, and therefore next Tuesday, it's dead in the water.
So for the DUP, the backstop is a showstopper?
Very much a showstopper, and it'll be a showstopper for Theresa May next week. And where does she go after that? I find it very frustrating because I'm a respectful person to everyone in politics. I try to be anyway. And with the Prime Minister in particular, I feel that she's a person that I had a great respect for. But at this moment in time, I have little confidence in her to deliver something that removes the backstop, and because of that, at this moment in time, the withdrawal agreement is over.
Lisa Cameron, wouldn't the Prime Minister have a case in saying to the SNP, look, you may not find my deal perfect, but it's a lot better than a hard Brexit and no deal at all. Isn't there some attraction for the SNP in seeing the Prime Minister's offer as second best to what you really want?
I think what people in my constituency want is certainly not second best. They want what they voted for, that was actually to remain in the EU. It was overwhelming in my constituency, it was overwhelming in every constituency across Scotland. I have to reflect their views. Parliament just now is operating in what I would call constitutional denial as a psychologist, because this deal's not going anywhere. It doesn't meet the demands of Brexiteers. It certainly doesn't meet the demands of people who want to have a strong single market and customs union engagement such as our party. And it's a deal that actually, in terms of even the Brexiteers, when I speak to them to try to find out their perspective, say a backstop's meant to be there as an insurance policy, but it's actually leaving people more vulnerable in the UK. So how can you negotiate a backstop as an insurance policy that leaves people more vulnerable? That's just crazy. So that's the Brexiteers' perspective. I'm looking very much at the economy, the jobs, the livelihoods and the constituents' wishes that I represent, and actually Theresa May's deal falls far short, so I couldn't possibly vote for it.
And do you agree with Jim Shannon that there seems to be a parallel universe that the government whips and the cabinet are occupying, where their deal is gathering support? Is there any sign at all that they're going to manage to get anything like the numbers required for a majority?
I doubt that, and I think they're even saying this morning, from what I've looked at, perhaps it'll pass on, a second time or a third time in Parliament. So that doesn't sound to me like confidence, and it doesn't sound to me like a deal that anyone's going to accept. I think what has to happen is that Parliament looks at all of the options and tries to find common ground, and actually Parliament is going to start taking back control, because that control has definitely been lost by the UK Tory government.
Jim Shannon, you said a few seconds ago that you're saying to Theresa May, respectfully, start thinking about what's going to happen after you lose the vote. What do you think will happen?
Well, and I've talked to the Conservative MPs, and I've had some conversations over the last few days, which have been very, very interesting. I get this impression that the Prime Minister, when she loses the withdrawal agreement vote next Tuesday, will then go back to Europe, cap in hand, with no confidence, with no strength, with no courage, asking the EU to look, I wasn't able to get it through, what can you give me to help me? And we're going to have we all know the film Groundhog Day. We're going to have Groundhog Day, where she goes over to Europe, she comes back with no real concessions, and goes back again, and we're going to have this to and fro, and I suspect from now until to the end of March. In between times, Labour Party will probably try to push for, I understand, and you probably know this, that there's going to be a no confidence motion after the withdrawal agreement, probably next Wednesday.
Have the DUP decided their line if that's an eventuality?
Well, we'll have to make that decision before that. I think it would be probably fair to say that we would probably support government in that, and we will not support a no confidence motion put forward by the Labour Party, because we have a confidence in supply arrangement and a deal which we will honour, even though we have a very clear difference of opinion on the withdrawal agreement, and a very clear difference of opinion on the backstop. I've gently said, maybe forcibly said to the MPs, the Conservative MPs, to the whips, to the junior ministers and to the senior ministers, that would take away the withdrawal agreement and we can live with what you have. Now, that's their goal to achieve. Can they get that through? Only time will tell. Sometimes I think as the closer you get to the D-Day, closer you get to the 29th of March, perhaps maybe the reality will saunter through the minds of those in the EU and the Republic of Ireland, and they might say, we're better to have some sort of a deal. Let's get that deal. It could be a last-minute one. Being the eternal optimist, I hope it will be.
Lisa Cameron, Jim Shannon's almost suggesting there might be almost like a zombie government. It can't get a majority for its deal, but there's no majority to vote it out of office. What do the SNP think will happen if Theresa May's deal goes down?
Yeah, I think Jim's right. I think that the plan from government is that they'll go back and forth to the EU to try to negotiate more concessions and get a more palatable deal for the Conservatives and the DUP to vote through. Whether that's likely, it doesn't seem to me that that's going to be the case. There is this institutional denial that I think has spread across the party as people become more entrenched in their positions. Parliament, I think you will see, start to take back greater control in terms of the way any potential deal is defined, or any potential deal should not be defined. And if Parliament can't come together for a solution and the no confidence vote fails, then the option really is to go back to the people, to have a people's vote and a second referendum to ask the people, what do you actually want to see in relation to Brexit?
Now, we've heard a lot this week that MPs are getting hassled outside the the House of Commons that the temperature's rising. Have you experienced any difficulty with the public? When you and Jim, as anti and pro-European, seem to get on well enough, has there been any difficulty that you've experienced?
Well, I've been very aware of what's been happening, and I think it's extremely serious. I know on the run-up to actually the first vote in relation to leaving the EU, I had experienced a death threat in relation to that, so I know people's feelings run high, and it's something that I think we have to be very cautious of, and to make sure we are always respectful, and I think that's an important point that Jim's made, that across party divides we are respectful and that we find common ground, as well as obviously sticking by our principles, in the way that we should as parliamentarians. But that's one of the issues. We need to make sure that Parliament's disarray doesn't overspill into the people of the UK's disarray and cause conflict.
Jim Shannon, as a non-Irish MP, you'll be particularly sensitive to rising temperatures and difficulties in politics. Have you experienced any difficulty as we've read about this week?
No, I haven't. My constituency voted to leave. So therefore, my constituency, I think I reflect, and I do believe I reflect the majority of that opinion. So therefore, back home, the opinion that I'm getting will always be, well done, keep at it. Don't move back whatsoever in the backstop, and ensure that you hold the Prime Minister accountable for what she's about to do, and I'm doing that.
Jim Shannon, Lisa Cameron,
Thank you very much.
Back to Brexit, but a Happy New Year to you both.
And to you as well.
To Brexit or not to Brexit? That is apparently now not the question. Perhaps then it's deal or no deal. The Westminster Parliament is either a Shakespearean tragedy or a game show. It's a question of take your pick. Or perhaps it resembles a soap opera with a plot that never ever finishes. It seems certain that the Prime Minister's European deal is going down next week. Everyone seems to know that, except the Prime Minister. So what then? There is now lurking the dangerous pro-European amendment passed in the House of Commons yesterday that might force the government to come back following defeat within 3 days. That is potentially more episodes of meaningful votes than Coronation Street. Theresa May might reflect that sometimes it's not just about parliamentary numbers, but about losing the authority to command Parliament. But what is more likely is a zombie government. That is a government which cannot command a majority on its European policy, facing an opposition which cannot secure a majority to kick out the government. It would be a government of the living dead, in office but not in power, still alive but stumbling towards their inevitable demise, while the country hurtles towards the Brexit cliff edge. And so what is the solution to this Westminster conundrum? Parliament should suspend Article 50, stop the clock, allow the time and the space for a parliamentary consensus to be found. And if that cannot be found, then there must be a general election or a referendum, or both, to settle the issue once and for all. Of course, for Scotland, there could be a quite different question and a very different answer. And so from Taz and me and all of us here at the show, it's goodbye for now.